Hi, it's Paul here from Atkins Technicolor. This little video is just to explain as much about colour management as I can in a few minutes so you can get an idea of where we're coming from. So in the digital world, all colours are sort of boiled down to a bunch of ones and zeros. And as a part of that, we like to map them into these sort of three-dimensional forms that you can see spinning around in front of you here to describe colours and describe how different devices, and what I mean by device, I mean a screen or a printer or a camera, how that device sees and renders colour. So I've got a program called Profile Maker Pro running, and the Profile Editor module out of it is up and running, which allows me to tweak colour profiles. What we're looking at is a map from what you can see the lightness end through to solid black at the bottom end here, and all the other elements of the spectrum rotating around the edge. So this describes it, and what we're looking at is Kodak's Pro Photo color space, which is the largest color space ever described digitally. In fact, it's larger than what the human eye can see, and what we're seeing is a representation of it, not actually the color space, because our eyes and our monitor couldn't see or display those extreme colors. But it's a great one because it's the best way of thinking about the world of color that's out there, what's actually there, including the electromagnetic spectrum from infrared to ultraviolet. Now, if I just turn that off, we'll now have a look at what Adobe RGB looks like. And just straight away you can see it's significantly smaller than Pro Photo RGB. But it's great because it's got a lot of these saturated colors. And just to explain to you, we're really looking at saturated colors at the outside of this object is the extremes, the maximum saturation. In the heart of it, if I drop this down a bit, we'll choose Adobe RGB here, and we'll drop it down. At the heart of all of this stuff, and I'll turn these others off, is in the middle there are the pastel colors and the grays, the non-saturated. So throughout all these color spaces, they kind of remain the same. They're always there in the middle. But the maximum extremes, the fire engine red and the bright blues, they're the things that vary. So now let's compare this to sRGB. So we're looking at sRGB sitting inside Adobe RGB, which is really interesting. You can see it doesn't have those maximum extreme colors, but it sits nicely within it. It's quite similar at this end of the spectrum, but out here it's quite a bit different. This is why we encourage our photographers, when they're having to lock their images into a color space, to lock them into Adobe RGB. Now, some people are talking about locking them into Pro Photo RGB, but the problem is you're seeing colors far beyond what is printable and perhaps what will ever be printable. However, there was a time when we thought we couldn't print certain Adobe RGB colors, but some of the wider inkjet printers, wider gamut inkjet printers are getting close to some of the Adobe RGB. But there's Adobe inside sRGB. Now let's just turn on CMYK. The hard thing to understand with CMYK is device specific. So it's actually a color space that's described on a particular printing device. So I can't show you every printing device, it would be ridiculous. But I can show you this generic CMYK, which is FOGRA 39, and it's a good general thought for it. So this is what can be printed on average. Some printers may get better reds and greens than others, and it might be a different shape, but this is a reasonably good indicator. But the interesting thing is when we turn on sRGB, just drop down that transparency a little bit here on sRGB, and I'll bring it up on CMYK, you can see that it's quite a bit larger than that, and Adobe RGB is even larger again than it. So what does this mean? Well, this means under sRGB and Adobe RGB, you're seeing colors that can't be printed. But sRGB is a little closer to CMYK, therefore you're getting less, I might say, disappointment at what you're seeing. So this is why some labs suggest that you use sRGB, but there are colors which are actually outside that, and you can see that there's a little slither at here of a color that's printable. And of course, this is a generic CMYK I'm showing you. If I could show you what we can get out of say, PhotoRag, you'd find on our Epson, you'd find it quite a bit larger again, and it is more on the range of Adobe RGB. So you need to be aware of it and how it's working, but sRGB is less issues. Now, just quickly, let's hop into Photoshop and show you how the implication of that is. An image here in Photoshop, we can see an sRGB. If we want to convert it to another color space, we can go under Edit menu. We need to show all these menu items to see it, but we can convert to profile and we can convert in and out of things. Now, it's really important you use the convert process. The convert allows you to move between them, and the color management will keep your neutral colors the same and your extremes. It will move them without visibly showing much difference. And you can see here, there's nothing really happening. However, if I use an assign profile, which is a really dangerous process, you can see it's actually changing the color here to a brighter color. We don't want that to happen. We want it to keep it as it was. Okay? The only time you would assign a profile if you were getting a missing profile. So always convert and do it with the understanding, with good color management, that you've got a good screen well set up and you're going to trust your color management system to do it right. And if you want to know more about that, give me a call at Atkins Technicolor. We do run seminars on the like. So thanks for listening.